If you can hear this, you're already doing better than most. This is Mark Ellis, coming to you from what used to be WQKR, 680 AM, somewhere under a dead strip mall on the north side of Columbus, Ohio. I don't know how far this signal reaches anymore. I don't know how many towers are still standing, how many lines of wire are still stretching through the ice, how many amps I'm pushing into nothing but frozen air. I just know the red light on the console is still on. The needle still twitches when I talk. And every now and then someone out there answers. So I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to keep treating this like it matters. Because the silence out there is louder than the wind, louder than the ice cracking off roofs, louder than the transformers when they blew one by one, like someone dropping thunder right over our heads. If this is the first time you're stumbling onto this frequency, if you're twisting a half-frozen dial in the dark of a car or a basement or what's left of a living room, here's the short version. The world didn't end in fire. It ended in a thermostat that won't go up, in a sun that forgot how to rise. It ended in slow motion, in degrees and days. Outside the station, the parking lot is a white sheet, knee-deep and hard as concrete. The snow doesn't look soft anymore. It's like someone poured white cement over the city and left it to set. The sky has that same dull gray. It's had for weeks. No blue, no sun, just a flat lid over everything, spinning out light that feels wrong. I checked the thermometer nailed crooked over the back door before I came in here. It stops at -40. The needle is past that, buried so far down the dial that the glass is starting to frost from the inside. I don't know the real number anymore. The last time we got an official reading from the National Weather Service was 10 days ago, when Cleveland was reporting -55 without wind chill 10 days ago. That might as well be a different age. Back then, some of the highways were still open. Back then, you could still smell exhaust on the main roads, still see taillights threading through the gray like red beads. Now, if you see headlights at night, you don't sleep. You know, when this started, nobody believed the first guy. It's funny, in a dark way, how it always takes one person we shouldn't trust to say the truth out loud. It was a small-time meteorologist from Cincinnati who went viral first. That was, 6 weeks ago? 7? Time is a mess now. Anyway, he was on a YouTube stream at 3 in the morning, half asleep, talking over satellite images that didn't make sense. He kept saying the word stalling like it was some normal hiccup, but you could hear his voice shaking. He zoomed in on the jet stream that usually loops neat and clean over Canada, like a white river on the weather map. Only it wasn't looping. It was sagging, hanging down over the Midwest, twisted like someone had grabbed it with a fist we couldn't see and dragged it south. "This doesn't look right," he kept saying. "This doesn't look right." People in the comments were calling him dramatic, saying he was chasing clicks. But then the bigger names picked it up: Boston, Chicago, New York. The early morning news shows ran segments with that same stalled jet stream graphic. They slapped big red arrows on top, dropped the words "once in a century" and "historic anomaly" and "Arctic plunge," like you can soften the blow if you say it with enough gloss and upbeat music. 2 days later, the first grids tripped. Minnesota went dark overnight. I remember sitting here in this exact chair, talking into this exact microphone, reading out alerts from the Associated Press that power was being rotated. That was the phrase they used at first: rotated, like crops. Temporary load shedding, a planned outage. That was the official language, calm and soft. While people's furnaces were dying in real time, while hospitals in Duluth started sending out quiet messages, asking anyone with four-wheel drive and blankets to come help move patients, because their backup generators were already at the edge. We took a call from a nurse there on this station. Her name was Hannah, from Lakeside Medical. She told me she could see her breath in the hall outside the ICU. That was the moment I stopped saying cold front and started using the word collapse. Management didn't like that. "We don't want to spread panic, Mark," they said. "Stick to the official reports. Management isn't here anymore." The last time I saw my station manager, he was packing his SUV with bags of rice and canned soup in the back parking lot, his kids wrapped in so many coats they couldn't bend their arms. He said they were heading south, toward Tennessee, because his brother had a cabin there, and it doesn't get that bad down south. I wonder if he made it past Cincinnati before the interstates turned into graveyards of frozen cars. If you're new here, you should know I wasn't supposed to be this guy. I used to be the voice that told you morning traffic on I-71, the random guy who spoke over pop songs, the man who read ads about half-price wings and car dealerships and weekend sales at the outlet mall. I would say, "Good morning, Columbus," like that meant something, like the city was a body that woke up and buttoned its shirt and went off to work. Now I say, if you're in Columbus and you can hear this, check on your neighbors, seal your windows, and stop waiting for the state to come. Now my sponsors are the people who drop off hand-cranked batteries and tins of coffee at the station door. Now my ratings are the number of voices that still answer when I open the lines. I still say the time out of habit, even though no one has looked at a clock that actually matches the sky in a while. Right now, by the clock over the console, it's 9:32 p.m. If I look at the narrow slit of sky over the back loading dock, it might as well be midnight. The snow eats every bit of light and throws it back wrong. You lose track of where the day ends and the night begins. The first real sign that this wasn't just a bad winter came from the guys who used to swear they had everything under control. I'm talking about the labs, the agencies, the think tanks. Most of them went quiet pretty fast, but some of the early leaks slipped out before someone higher up found the right switch to flip. We had a NOAA researcher call the station one afternoon, back when the roads were still passable and coffee shops were still open. He wouldn't give his real name on air, so we called him Ben from Baltimore. You could tell he was sitting in some office with fluorescent lights, papers spread out, monitors flashing graphs. He said they'd been watching the same pattern for months. Pressure systems that should have moved stalled instead. Ocean currents dragging cold water further and further south. He used a word I'd never heard in any weather report before. Feedback. He said once the sea ice passed a certain point, it was like a switch. You get more white surface bouncing sunlight back into space, the air above cools more, the current slows, then it pulls more cold water behind it. A spiral, but in the wrong direction. A spiral down. It wasn't just a harsh winter. It was the climate finding a new groove, sliding into it, like a needle dropping into a track you can't lift it out of. A day after that call, the White House gave a statement. I played it live because back then we still thought that meant something. The press secretary stood at a podium with a little flag pin on her jacket and read a script about unprecedented conditions, temporary strain on the grid, and the full power of the federal government mobilized. She said the Army Corps of Engineers was on it, that they were reinforcing lines, that fuel shipments were being prioritized for key facilities. She said no one would be left behind. I remember the way my phone lines lit up while she talked, and the way my stomach twisted, because I knew at least half of those callers were going to tell me that they'd already been left behind, that they had been left behind hours ago, days ago, when the first station lost power and never came back on. You can tell the exact moment you move from crisis to collapse. It's quiet. It's not a siren or an announcement. It's when the people who used to promise you answers stop talking. First, the local news anchors started wearing thicker coats on camera. Then they vanished, and the station logo sat there, looping the same technical difficulties slide for hours. Then the TV just showed static. Then nothing. The phone alert system that used to scream at us about amber alerts and flash floods went silent. FEMA's website stopped updating. The NoAA app on my phone died when the last cell tower that still had juice in Franklin County iced over and snapped under the weight of the storm. I know some of you out there still scan through the FM band, looking for that familiar emergency alert tone. The one we all grew up hearing during tornado drills and test messages on Sunday mornings. If you hear it, record it. Write down everything they say. Because I haven't heard it in 5 days. Either the people who used to run that system are gone, or the towers they used are down, or the power that used to keep those systems humming has been pulled back to keep a few bunkers lit somewhere under a mountain. I'm rambling. Sorry. I said I would keep this focused. If you're listening, here's what you need right now, in plain terms. The temperature is dropping a little more each day. It is not going back up, not in any way that matters. The grid is in pieces. If you have power where you are, treat it like a miracle and prepare for it to vanish. Stock every bit of heat you can that doesn't rely on a wall outlet. Wood, propane, charcoal, blankets, layers of clothes. If you're burning anything indoors, crack a window. I know that sounds insane, but if you don't, you'll go to sleep and never wake up. Carbon monoxide is quiet and patient. It doesn't care that the world is already ending. If you have neighbors, check on them, especially old people, kids, anyone who lives alone. If you have something they don't, share it, because hoarding is just another way of dying, only slower and lonelier. We're going to take calls in a bit, if the lines hold. Before that, I want to go back, for anyone who wants the story from the start. How did we get here? How did we slide from cold snap to whatever this is? I think about that a lot when the generator is low and the wind starts to creep under the door. The first time I felt that something was wrong, really wrong, not just weird weather, was the day I saw birds falling out of the sky on my way to work. This was early on, back when the snow was still pretty, back when people were still posting pictures of frosted trees on Instagram with little captions about winter wonderland. I remember I was driving down I-71 near the Hudson Street exit, wipers on high because the snow was coming in sideways, and I saw a cluster of dark shapes ahead, drifting down in a way that didn't look like any flock I'd ever seen. At first I thought it was trash bags that had come loose from a truck, the way they fluttered. Then I got closer and saw feathers pressed flat to thin bodies, wings stuck to frozen air, eyes open but not seeing anything. They hit the road and shattered like glass. I had to jerk the wheel to avoid driving over them, and my tires skidded on black ice hidden under the fresh snow. The craziest part? The car next to me just kept going, like nothing strange had happened at all. I looked over and saw the driver, a woman in a red knit hat staring straight ahead, hands at 10 and 2, her face calm. Maybe she didn't see. Maybe she didn't want to. The next sign came from the pipes. That week, plumbers were on every local ad break offering emergency freeze repair, rapid thaw services. Call now before the big chill. It was almost funny at first. People were still going out, still hitting bars and gyms. You'd see photos on social media of kitchen ceilings caved in from burst lines, water frozen in mid-arc, like someone had hit pause. People joked about it. Ohio problems. Then the water stopped running in whole blocks. The first neighborhoods to lose pressure were the ones on the edge of the city, the ones nobody thinks about unless election season is close. Old pipes, we were told. Aging infrastructure. We always knew it would be a problem someday. Someday arrived in a rush of ice and flaking copper. Here at the station, we still had running water until last week. Then one morning, I turned the tap in the break room and nothing came out but a low, aching groan from deep under the floor. The building shuddered. You could feel the pipes giving up, one by one, deep in the walls. You know who saw the next step before most of us? Truckers, long-haul drivers, the people who live on the interstate and know every rest stop and way station by smell. A guy named Red out of Toledo called me 3 weeks ago. He said he'd been running loads between Chicago and Pittsburgh for 20 years, that he knew every mile marker on I-80 like the back of his hand. He told me he'd never seen so many rigs pulled off on the shoulder, not from wrecks, but from frozen diesel. We're running additives, chains, the whole nine. He said, doesn't matter. The fuel gels, the lines freeze, and you're just sitting there in a metal box waiting for a tow that ain't coming. When the truck stopped, the shelves emptied. First the fresh stuff, then the canned goods, then the weird off-brand pasta that nobody buys unless there's nothing else. The mayor's office gave press conferences saying there was no need to panic. People queued outside Kroger and Walmart for hours anyway, breath fogging the air, stamped ration slips in hand. They stood under banners that still said Happy Holidays, while security guards let them in 10 at a time. I keep coming back to the messages we got from insiders in those early days. Scientists, soldiers, line workers, nurses, people stuck in the gears. They all painted the same picture, piece by piece. This wasn't just a cold front. It was a system failure, top to bottom. One of the first military voices we heard was a guy who called himself Barry from Wright Pat, up near Dayton. You can guess where he actually worked. He called in on a Sunday night, line crackling harder than usual, breath heavy like he'd had to run somewhere private to talk. He said they'd been flying surveillance loops over the Great Lakes and up into Ontario, not for foreign planes, but to map ice spread. Lake Erie is a plate, he said, all the way across, no breaks. You get that sometimes in late February, sure, but not like this, not this fast. He said the brass were more worried about the ice than any enemy ice pushes on bridges, on pylons, on dams. Ice snaps steel like twigs if there's enough of it. And it wasn't just here. Radio chatter said the Hudson Bay was locking solid. The North Atlantic shipping lanes were choked with blocks the size of office towers. Container ships anchored off New York and Norfolk, stuck, their hulls groaning. If you lose the ships and the trucks at the same time, your just-in-time economy becomes a just-ran-out system overnight. At the same time, the political talk shows tried to turn this into another debate. You had one side yelling that this was punishment for ignoring the climate for decades, the other side saying it was a hoax, a globalist cold scare, even as their own pipes froze and their staff started coming to work in snow pants. That lasted maybe 10 days. Then the studios went dark. You can't shout at each other on live TV if there's no live TV. You can't spin a story if nobody is left to set up the cameras or plug in the lights. Meanwhile, actual scientists were arguing over the scraps of data they could still get. Some of them said this was a fluke, a brutal but temporary lurch. Others said we'd kicked some switch in the deep ocean currents, that the Atlantic meridional something had slowed to a crawl, that the heat that used to flow north was stuck in the tropics. Now I remember a clip from a British climate guy who said, very calmly, that parts of Europe would start to feel like the inside of a deep freeze, while the equatorial belt would turn into a boiling ring. I wondered, sitting here in this Midwestern studio, what it felt like in London right then. Are they also sitting in dim radio booths, saying these same words into dead air? Let me check the lines. 1 second. Okay, we've got someone. Line 1 is lit. I'm going to patch them through. Remember, no names you don't want the world to hear. Use first names, or fake ones. Don't give your exact address. We're not the only ones listening out there. Yeah, you're on 680. I'm Mark. Who's this? Hey Mark. This is Ryan. I'm in Erie. Erie, Pennsylvania. Ryan in Erie. You still by the lake, man? A short laugh. Yeah, by the lake is one way to put it. Tell me what it looks like there. Last official thing we heard said the shoreline was getting eaten alive. It's okay. So you know how in summer there's all those ice cream stands and little rental places by the bay? The kind where you can sit on a bench and just watch the water for hours? Sure. Those benches are gone. I mean, they're there, but you can't see them. It's like the lake stood up, like the whole surface just rose up and locked in place. There's this wall of ice where the horizon used to be. It's not smooth either. It's jagged, peaks and ridges like a mountain range, but white. The wind comes off it and feels like it cuts right through your coat, into your bones. You step outside for 5 minutes and your nose hairs freeze. My sister's car doors froze shut a week ago. We just left it there. It's going to be part of the scenery now, I guess. How's power? It's on and off. We had a full blackout 3 days ago. Entire grid went down, from what I can tell. No street lights, no traffic lights, nothing. It was just the glow from people burning stuff in their yards. I've got a little gas generator my dad bought after some storm a few years back. We run it for a couple hours a day, just enough to keep the pipes from totally freezing and charge phones. But gas it's almost gone. Stations are empty, or they've been smashed. There was a fight at the Shell on 10th Street yesterday. At least, that's what my neighbor said. I didn't go. I'm not going to risk my life over 5 gallons in a red can. Are there any shelters? Official ones, I mean. Red Cross, FEMA, City Run. Yeah, they opened one at the high school. At least they said they did. We went there on day 1. The gym was packed. People shivering on those thin mats they use for PE class, huddling under coats. The power cut out 3 hours after we got there. The principal, or whoever was in charge, said they were working on it, but I don't know. We stayed that night. You could hear kids crying in the dark. The next morning, my mom said we were going back home. She said, at least there, if we died, we'd die in our own beds. There's a pause. I can hear him breathing, the small hiss in the gaps between his words. Ryan, what do you need right now? He laughs again, but it's hollow. A plane ticket to somewhere warm? Try again. Okay, facts, I guess. Is this going to stop? I know you're not God, but is this it? Is this how it's going to be from now on? I swallow. The chair creaks when I shift. The walls feel closer whenever someone asks me that. I don't know, I say. I can tell you what I've heard, what people smarter than me have said. They think this isn't a normal swing. It's not like those polar vortex winters we used to get and then complain about on Monday morning talk radio. Something deeper shifted. Could it swing back? Maybe. Planet's done weird things before, but it doesn't move on our schedule. If it corrects, it might be after we're all gone. So you plan like this is the new normal. You plan like winter is the only season now. You build thick. You move what you can closer together. You stop wasting heat on empty rooms. You stop waiting on trucks that aren't coming. Okay, he says quietly. Okay, I guess I knew that. Just needed to hear someone say it. I'm saying it, but I'm also saying this. People survive worse than nature. They survive war, famine, sickness. They survive losing everything except the person sitting next to them. If you've got someone in that house with you, you're not gone yet. You say you have a neighbor, you have a mom. That's your team. Take care of each other. Don't do stupid hero stuff. Don't go out when the wind is screaming just because you dropped a can of beans on the porch. Wait. Plan your moves, and if you can, keep a battery radio tuned to this dumb voice on 680. I'll be here as long as I can breathe in this room and this generator keeps coughing. Thanks, Mark. The line clicks off. I stare at the panel, at the little light that was Ryan's voice, now dark. If you're in Erie, or anywhere along that strip of land that used to be called the Snow Belt, listen to what he just said and understand this. The lake effect isn't a joke anymore. The water is turning to armor, and that armor doesn't melt when the calendar says it should. Those of you further inland, here in Columbus or down in Dayton, Cincinnati, even as far as Lexington, Kentucky, yes, I've heard from all of you. Do not get cocky. Just because you don't have a frozen ocean knocking on your door doesn't mean you're safe. The cold doesn't care about landmarks. It's seeping through drywall, creeping under doors, sliding under all the little gaps we never thought about when we lived in a world where insulation was just something you complained about on your heating bill. I promised insider talk, so here's one that came in yesterday, scratched in a shaky hand on notebook paper shoved under our front door. No sender name, no return address, just the words, "Read this on air if you can." It was from someone who said they worked for a regional grid operator here in the Midwest. They described how the system was built like a spider web. Lines feed lines, substations feed cities, and it all relies on a balance that doesn't like surprises. When the cold hit, demand spiked hard. Everyone cranked their thermostats. Furnaces started drawing more and more power. At the same time, the cold thickened oil in transformers, made metal brittle, caused relays to stick. They started losing stations. 1, 2, 10. Each loss pushed more load onto the ones still standing, which were already crying under the strain. They called it cascading failure. Once it starts, it's almost impossible to stop. You can shed load, turn off whole neighborhoods, whole towns, to save the rest, but if you don't move fast enough, the remaining nodes cook and die anyway, and you can't just flip them back on after they've been sitting in -50 for days. You need parts. You need crews. You need roads. We don't have any of that at scale anymore. The note ended with this line. Tell people to stop expecting the lights to come back like they used to. We're not in a storm. We're on the other side of something breaking. I'm going to be honest with you, whoever's still listening. That line hit me harder than almost anything else. We're on the other side of something breaking. Not while it's breaking. Not before it breaks. After past tense. We're in the echo, not the crack. It's a simple idea, but once you let it in, it changes how you look at everything. You stop waiting for the old world to start back up like a stalled car. You stop thinking in until and start thinking in if. If we make it to spring, if that means anything anymore. If we can get enough people in one place to keep themselves warm with shared body heat and shared work. If the places that still have power remember the ones that don't, I can't give you hope in a shiny package. I can't tell you this will all be fine, because it won't. Not for everyone. But I can give you stories. And maybe that's something, stories that tell you you're not the only one staring at dead screens in a silent room. Stories that prove there are still other beating hearts out there, other breaths fogging the dark. If you have a radio, if you have a voice, if you have the courage to talk while your teeth chatter, call me. Call this number. Yeah, the old station line still works when the phone system decides to cooperate. If you can't call, write. Slide a note under the door like our grid friend did. I'll read it as long as my hands can still grip paper. We're going to open the lines again in a bit. Before that, I want to tell you about the night the government stopped talking. The exact night. Because I was here for it. I heard the last clear words before the static rushed in and swallowed the rest. If you're waking up to this signal, I hope it means the cold didn't get you in the dark. This is still Mark Ellis, or whatever's left of me after tonight. I'm talking from the same booth in Columbus, but it feels different in here now. The walls feel tighter. The air is sharper. The generator has been coughing like a sick dog for the last hour, and I keep checking the fuel gauge the way someone checks a pulse. It's running low. Everything is running low. The time, if the clock is even close, is 11:14 p.m. The station floor is colder than yesterday. I had to scrape frost off the inside of the windows before I sat down. When I opened the back door earlier, the metal stuck to my glove. And when I looked outside, I swear I could hear the cold moving. Like it has weight now. Like something pushing through the spaces between buildings. I know I said earlier that we'd talk about the night the government stopped talking. That can't wait any longer. You deserve to know what really happened. You deserve to know how the silence started. It was 2 weeks ago, maybe a little more. Again, time is a mess. Back then, the power was already spotty, but the emergency broadcast stations were still sending those clipped robotic updates. You know the voice. Flat tone, perfect diction, never sounds human. They had been repeating the same script for days. Unprecedented weather event. Stay indoors. Conserve power. Emergency services overloaded. The usual lines, except they sounded thinner every time. That night, something changed. It was around 1 in the morning. The wind outside sounded like it was tearing at the walls, and I could feel the draft from the west door. Even though I'd stuffed towels under the cracks, I had the radio monitor on low, just listening for anything. And then the emergency alert system kicked in by itself. No warning tone, no let-in, just a voice dropping into the middle of the room like someone had tapped me on the shoulder. Only this time the voice wasn't the usual emotionless one. It sounded like a real person. A man, young, breathing fast. He said, "If you can hear this, do not repeat. Do not expect federal response teams. Northern and central sectors are lost. Repeat. Lost." Then something slammed in the background. I heard shouting, not words, just pure panic. And then another voice, deeper, yelling, "Cut it! Cut it! Pull it! Pull the..." Static ate everything. Not a fade out. A kill switch. Like someone yanked a cord out of a wall. The feed never came back. The next morning, every station that used to run emergency alerts was silent. Not offline. Silent. Like the equipment was there, but no one was touching it. No one was at the controls. No one left alive to push the buttons. I've replayed that message 100 times in my head. Northern and central sectors are lost. I don't know what sectors meant. States? regions, military zones. It doesn't matter anymore. The meaning was simple. Wherever that man was, help wasn't coming. Maybe that was the last time the old world tried to talk to us. After that, the real collapse started. Phone lines overloaded, then frozen. Whole counties disappeared off the map when the last tower died. The highways went dark. The suburbs turned into white deserts. And people, I hate that this part is true, stopped looking out for each other. Not everyone. Not the ones with heart. But enough. Enough to make the nights dangerous. I heard gunshots last night near the old strip mall. Not hunting. Not warning shots. The kind people fire when they're scared and desperate and see shadows that look like food or fuel or a threat. It's getting worse as the cold goes deeper and the shelves go emptier. You'd think the cold would keep people indoors. It doesn't. Hunger makes people bold. Fear makes people stupid. Those two things together could end the rest of us faster than the ice. But tonight something else happened, and it's the reason my hands are shaking while I talk. About 2 hours ago, right before I went live, someone knocked on the station door. That hasn't happened in days. I grabbed the crowbar I keep behind the desk and went upstairs to the entrance. The hallway was dark except for my flashlight. The knock came again, weak, uneven. I asked who it was. No answer. Just a soft scraping sound like gloves brushing the metal. I wasn't going to open it. No way. Not after what I've seen this week. But then a voice came through. A woman. Barely above a whisper. She said, "Please, I need to leave something. I can't stay." I told her to slide it under the door. She did. Something thin, paper and plastic. When I looked through the side window, I saw her silhouette step back. She had a hood pulled tight, shoulders shaking from the cold. She didn't wait. She didn't speak again. She just turned and staggered back into the snow, disappearing between the drifts like she was swallowed whole. I didn't call out. I didn't chase. You don't chase strangers in this weather. You don't open doors in the dark. I waited until I couldn't hear her footsteps. Then, I picked up the envelope. Inside was a folded map of the United States, the kind you get at gas stations, except it was marked, thick red lines, heavy circles drawn around whole regions, and at the top, in black marker, one sentence. The freeze line is moving faster than projections. Tell them to head south now. No signature. On the back of the map was a date, 5 days ago, and coordinates I don't recognize. I'll read them to you later, but right now, I need to talk about the part that made my stomach drop. Under the map, tucked inside the plastic, was a small badge. Metal, government issued, the kind you clip to a belt. I won't say the agency name out loud, not yet, but I'll say this much. Whoever left that map wasn't just some scared person. They were someone with clearance, someone who wasn't supposed to be out here alone, someone running. I don't know if she's still alive out there. I really don't. But whatever she risked to bring that here, it means this freeze is spreading in ways they didn't tell us, faster than they planned for. Far faster. I'm going to go over the map in a minute with a flashlight and try to make sense of the circles. But first, I want to open the lines. If anyone is still awake, if anyone has seen movement on the roads, or new ice patterns, or military convoys, yeah, some of you reported those, call in. Tell me what's out there. Tell me what the cold is doing tonight. The number still works. I'll be here. Mark out. Don't panic if the signal cuts for a second. The generator's been giving these tiny hiccups. like it's breathing through a straw. If it goes quiet, just wait. I'll hit it with the wrench again. That usually scares it back to life. This is Mark Ellis, still in Columbus, still in the booth that feels smaller every day. It's, according to the clock, 9:48 p.m., but it's been dark for hours. The power's been out in this part of the city for 3 days straight now. The only lights outside are whatever candles people have in the apartments across the street, flickering behind blankets they've nailed to their windows. The cold is worse tonight, sharper, like it's cutting instead of freezing. You can feel it even through the concrete walls. I had to put my boots on inside the booth because my socks were starting to stiffen on the floor. Before I get into what happened today, I need to talk about the map again. The one left by that woman 2 nights ago. I spread it out on the desk earlier, under the last working lamp. The paper curled from the cold. The red ink looked like veins, winding down from the north, branching across the Midwest, splitting toward the Appalachians and cutting across the plains. The biggest circle, thick, messy, drawn like someone's hand was shaking, covered Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, and parts of Pennsylvania. Inside that circle, scribbled in small letters, non-recoverable zone. I stared at that phrase for an hour. Couldn't make myself read it out loud until now. Non-recoverable. That's the kind of language you use when you've stopped pretending things can be fixed. Under that, in the corner near the Gulf, there was another note. Window of survival narrowing. Move south now. And the coordinates I mentioned, those are even stranger. I checked them on an old atlas I found in the office. They point somewhere near the Tennessee-Mississippi border, middle of nowhere. No town, no base, no big highway. What's there? Why did someone want me to read that on air? Why mark all of this and risk stepping out into a freeze that kills people in minutes? I haven't figured it out yet. I'm trying. But today, something else happened. Something I can't leave out. This afternoon, around 2, I heard a sound I haven't heard since the world was normal. A helicopter. At first, I thought I was imagining it. The wind has been screaming against the roof, and sometimes it tricks you, makes you hear things. Voices, engines, music, even laughter. But this wasn't wind. This was the unmistakable chop of blades, slow and heavy, like it was fighting the air. I ran outside to the loading dock. Yeah, stupid move, I know. And the cold hit me so hard my eyes watered instantly. The sky was thick with gray, but I could see a dark shape moving over the far end of the city. Not high, not cruising, struggling. It wasn't military green, it wasn't police colors. It looked patched, like it had been repaired too many times and barely held together. It moved like something was wrong with it, like maybe ice was forming on the blades. I waved my arms even though I knew they couldn't see me from that distance. The thing wobbled, dipped low behind a row of warehouses, then disappeared completely. No explosion, no smoke, no return, just gone. I stayed out there longer than I should have, listening for any sound, any sign it had landed safely. Nothing. Just the cold chewing at my face and the wind scraping snow across the asphalt like sandpaper. When I made it back inside, my hands were so numb I couldn't turn the lock at first. Maybe that helicopter had nothing to do with the map. Maybe it was someone heading south, or heading nowhere. But the timing, it feels too close to be random. If any of you saw that thing, if anyone in Columbus heard it or saw where it went down, call in. I've checked the lines. They're working tonight. Barely. While I waited to warm up, I sorted through the messages shoved under the front door today. 3 scraps of paper, all different handwriting. These are from other survivors. I'll read parts of them. Names removed unless someone clearly wanted theirs shared. The first one says, "Mark, the ice is making noises under the bridge on Broad Street. Loud ones, like cracking, like shifting. People are afraid it's going to break." Yeah, it probably is. Ice doesn't stay still, not when it builds this deep. Bridges weren't made for this. If you're near any major bridge right now, Broad Street, Main Street, or even the I-70 lanes, stay off them. I don't care if the snow looks flat. Ice grows underneath, pushes up, warps steel. You don't want to be on a bridge when it decides it's tired of holding the world. The second note is from someone who didn't sign their name at all. Food is gone here. We tried the old supermarket on Cleveland Avenue, but it was stripped. Someone broke all the freezers open. Nothing left. Please tell people to stop going there. Message received. If you're northeast of downtown, avoid that entire strip. It's not worth the risk. Not anymore. The last note is longer. I'll read the important part. We saw people moving at night near the abandoned laundromat on 5th. Not walking right. Slow. Stiff. We called out. They didn't answer. They just kept moving toward us. We left. I'm not saying what I think it was. Just be careful. I know what they think it was, and I know what you're thinking now. No. I don't think there are zombies wandering around in the snow, but I've seen what cold does to people. When someone is half frozen, their joints lock, their face goes slack, their steps drag. They don't talk because their throat is too frozen to push out sound. Their mind isn't all there. They're not monsters. They're dying. If you see someone like that, don't go near unless you know you can help them. And even then, check the wind first. Frostbite hits fast now. Lightning fast. All right, I promised I'd talk about the last message from the government before things went silent. And I will. But before I do, I want to take a call. Line 2 is blinking. Let's see who's still out there. You're live. Who's this? Hello? Mark? Yeah, you're on. Go ahead. This is Angela. I'm calling from Louisville. Louisville? You still have phone service down there? Only sometimes. It cuts in and out. I've been trying to get through for 2 days. What's it like where you are? It's bad. Not as bad as you, I think. Not yet. We still have a little power downtown. Not much heat, but the lights flicker every now and then. The river is freezing. I've never seen the Ohio River freeze, but it is. Slow at first, then all at once. The barges are stuck in it like toys. Any help coming from the state? A short laugh. No. No one's coming. They told us to shelter in place. The shelters are full. People are sleeping in hallways. Hospitals are running on fumes. And today, something else happened. What? I heard gunshots, not far. Maybe 2 blocks. Maybe less. Do you know who it was? No, but people are hungry, Mark. People are tired and scared. And when people get scared... Yeah, I know. She breathes into the phone for a few seconds, the sound shaking. Mark, is it true? What you read? That the freeze line is moving faster? Yeah, it's true. Then what do we do? Do we leave? Do we stay? My mother can't walk far. She's 70. She can barely stand in this cold. If we head south, we won't make it far on foot. I rub my forehead hard enough to hurt. Angela, I can't tell you what to do. But I can tell you this. If you stay, prepare for the cold to get worse, much worse. If you leave, plan every step. Don't head into open roads at night. Don't follow crowds. Don't expect shelter. Move slow, move careful, move smart. She sniffles. Okay. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for still being here. I'll be here as long as I can. The line cuts. I sit for a moment, staring at the blinking panel. Louisville. That's hundreds of miles south of here, if they're freezing too. The map wasn't fear-mongering, it was a warning. And now, I need to talk about that last broadcast from the government. The one before the silence. It didn't come from a TV station. It didn't come from a press room. It came from a military channel. One you can only hear if you know the frequency someone leaked it. Someone wanted the world to hear it. I'll play it for you tonight, but not yet. Not before you're ready. Not before I explain what it said. We're not alone in this freeze. And I don't mean other countries. I mean something else. Something they knew before the cold even hit full force. If this signal sounds weaker tonight, that's because the wind shifted east and pushed a wall of ice against the relay tower outside the station. I can hear the metal groaning every few minutes. It sounds like a giant trying to twist the whole thing out of the ground. If the tower goes, you won't hear me again, not unless I jury-rig some kind of short-range transmitter in the parking lot. But until that happens, I'm still here. I'm not leaving this booth unless the cold forces me out, or the roof finally buckles. This is still Mark Ellis, WQKR, Columbus, Ohio. What's left of it. I barely slept last night. Every time I closed my eyes, that helicopter sound replayed in my head. Not the blades, the moment it dipped. Like the weight of the cold grabbed it midair. I don't think that thing made it out of the city. If it crashed, no one's going to find it under all this ice. The snow isn't soft anymore. It's layering like rock. If something goes down, it gets buried fast. But that's not what kept me awake the most. It was the message. The final message. The one the government didn't mean for us to hear. I told you I'd explain it tonight, and I will. I owe you that. But before I get to that, I need to explain where I was right before that message was leaked. Because it matters. It ties into why they shut everything down afterward. 3 days before the emergency channels went dead, I got a call. Not on the public line, but on the private station line no one uses anymore. It rang once, then twice, then cut to static. I thought it was a glitch. Then it rang again. This time, I picked up. A voice whispered, "Do not identify me. Do not record this. Just listen." I had no idea who it was. Could have been military, could have been a scientist, could have been some guy with a radio rig in his basement. Didn't matter. Something in the way he breathed, slow, controlled, like he was hiding from someone in the same room, made me sit up straight. He said, "The freeze is not natural." My first thought was that he meant climate change, the usual argument. But he interrupted himself fast, like he knew what I was thinking. No, not that. Not greenhouse gases. Not random jet stream collapse. This is deeper. You need to tell people. I told him I wasn't going to say anything on air without proof. He went quiet. Too quiet. I almost thought he vanished. Then he said something I haven't forgotten. Something I wish he never said. We broke something we didn't understand. I asked what that meant. He didn't answer directly. He just said, "There was an experiment. A test. It wasn't supposed to affect weather systems outside a small region, but it did. It cascaded. Once the feedback loop started, no one could stop it. I heard shuffling on his end. Papers. Maybe gear. Maybe uniforms. Then the voice lowered again. They're not telling the public because the panic would be worse than the cold. But the truth, what started this, wasn't nature. And then he said a name. A name I'm not going to repeat on air. Not yet. Not until I know I'm not sending people into a blind rage. What matters is what came next. He said, "You'll hear the last transmission soon. When you do, understand it's real." The line went dead. I sat there for 20 minutes staring at the wall. That was the day before everything fell apart. Now, here's the part you've been waiting for. The part that leaked. I'm going to say it exactly as I wrote it down, because even if the audio is gone, the words burned into my head. This was the last message from the government. This is North Command. If you are receiving this, maintain shelter. Do not move south in large groups. Repeat, do not move south in groups. Hostile conditions expected. Major infrastructure compromised. Natural systems unstable. Containment failed. Unknown phenomena advancing with the freeze line. If exposed. Then a long burst of static. Then one last sentence. Someone yelling in the background. The cold isn't the only thing coming. Then the feed died forever. That was it. Not snow measurements. Not wind chill values. Not safety tips. Unknown phenomena advancing with the freeze line. People have asked me what that means. I've thought about it every hour since. And here's the truth. I don't know. I don't have the missing piece of that sentence. But today, I saw something that makes me think they weren't lying. Around noon, through the slit window above the back hallway, I saw movement outside. Slow, heavy movement. Too heavy to be a person. Too slow to be a vehicle. The air shimmered around it like the cold was bending the light. It moved between the buildings without leaving footprints. I watched it for maybe 10 seconds before it vanished behind the old pharmacy. My eyes started watering from how cold the glass was, so I had to pull away. Maybe it was just a trick of the light. Maybe the cold does that to your brain after days without sleep. But maybe the freeze isn't empty. Maybe something comes with it. Okay. Deep breath. I'm not trying to scare you more than the world already has, but I won't lie to you. You deserve the truth, even the parts I don't understand. Let's read some of the messages and calls from today, because you need to know what others are seeing too. The first message came from a guy who signed his name as Lincoln from Worthington. Mark, the snow on our street is changing shape at night. Not melting, changing. We went to sleep with smooth drifts. We woke up with ridges like something pushed through from underneath. Underneath. That word is doing laps in my head. The second message is from Sarah in Westerville. My neighbor says the ground is making noises at night. Not cracking. Not settling. Actual noises. Like something scraping along the frozen soil. Last one is from a kid, probably a teenager, who didn't leave a name. If you hear whistling outside, don't open your door. I don't know what that means. I don't know what any of this means, but it matches what I saw today. The movement between the buildings, the way the snow didn't shift like it should, the way the air felt wrong around it. We were focused on the cold. Maybe we weren't supposed to be. Maybe the cold is just the doorway. Okay, let me check the lines. Line 1 is blinking. You're live. Who's this? It's Ronnie from Toledo. His voice is shaking, not from static, from fear. Ronnie, talk to me. What's happening? We saw something, Mark. Me and my brother. About an hour ago. What did you see? It was by the old glass plant, near the river. We went out to check the traps my brother set, and we heard this humming, but not from above, from the snow. Humming? Yeah, like metal vibrating. We thought maybe a power line snapped, but there aren't any left standing around there. And then he stops, breathing hard. Then what, Ronnie? Something moved under the ice, big enough to shake the ground. And then it hit the inside of the storm drain cover. Not from above, from below. I sit up straighter. From below? Yes. His voice cracks. It shook the whole street. My brother said it wasn't animal. It wasn't machinery. It wasn't anything natural. What do you think it was? I think the freeze woke up something underground. The line crackles, then dies. I sit there staring at the empty signal like it might speak again. The freeze woke up something underground. I'm not saying he's right, but I'm not saying he's wrong either. We're going to take another break before the next call. I need a second to think. My hands won't stop shaking.